Bibliophiles of the Internet. My name is Adriana and today I'm here to bring you a top 5 Wednesday video, and today's topic is our top 5 books that were required reading. So I had a lot of great titles to choose from today, but I really did my homework and narrowed it down, and I'm really excited to be sharing them with you today, so let's get into the list. At number 5, I have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is actually a really interesting choice for me because when I was assigned to read this book in class, I had already read it myself once. Long story short, the year before I was assigned to read this book in class, I had done a huge thesis paper on dystopian literature, talking about the trend of dystopian literature in YA especially. So I was comparing and contrasting YA dystopia and classic dystopia. So I did a lot of reading research. So I read things like The Hunger Games and Divergent, and I also pulled from classic dystopia like 1984, Brave New World, and The Handmaid's Tale. And actually, when I read this book for the first time as part of my research for that thesis paper, I thought it was just okay. It was kind of slow and boring. Nothing was really happening. I didn't fully understand it. So I thought it was just an okay dystopian novel. Then I was assigned to read it again, but for a creative writing class and not an English class. And that made all of the difference. When you have an entire room full of writers who just think so differently from other people and who are technically trained and know all about the elements of craft and how they function in a story, and then you give them a gem such as The Handmaid's Tale, which is so incredibly complex and layered and has so many great details and is just written so well, the discussions are limitless. They will go to so many insane places, and reading this book with a bunch of other writers really helped me appreciate every minute detail in this book, and I loved it so much more the second time. At number 4, I have A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This book was indirectly assigned to me. It was required reading, but it was required reading that I chose for myself. Here in America, when you're a senior in high school, the focus is British literature, and the senior project, which is an English assignment, is to read 2 books by a British author and then essentially compare and contrast them. But whatever author you choose is up to you. And I had a bunch of smart-ass friends who were like, I'm gonna do J.K. Rowling, I'm gonna do J.R.R. Tolkien, and I was so determined to find an author I had never read anything from before, and when I saw that Frances Hodgson Burnett was on the list, I was like, that's my lady. If you're a child of the 90s like I am, then you know the film adaptations for A Little Princess and The Secret Garden were fairly popular back then, and I was really excited to get the chance to read the books those films were inspired by, and that was a really great choice for me. I very highly recommend these. At number 3, I actually have 2 books. I'm just too lazy to get the other one, and that is the Iliad and the Odyssey, both by Homer. A couple of years ago, I took a mythology class, and honestly, that was one of the most rewarding classes I've ever taken in my entire life. And of course, we had to study the Iliad and the Odyssey, seeing as these are staples of the Greek mythos. Honestly, if you've never read these Greek epics for yourself, I can't explain that experience for you because they are so incredible through and through, amazing stories to the core, and there's a reason why they've survived so long. But these translations, especially the Stanley Lombardo translations, I very highly recommend them if you have to read these books for class. The language in these translations is so accessible. It's very easy to get into, to read, to understand, to digest, but also to enjoy. You get the full impact of the story, but the words themselves retain their original strength and raw power, and you feel like the spirit of the Iliad and the Odyssey lives on through these translations. They're just fantastic. Needless to say, I freaking love both the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I especially love this one because it inspired a little book called The Song of Achilles. No big deal. At number 2 is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I was assigned to read this book just last year for a creative writing class that was called The Mixed Race Novel in America, and this had actually just been published, and one of the primary focuses in this novel is that the characters belong to a mixed race family, so it snuck its way into the curriculum. And I'm so glad that it did, because honestly, if I hadn't been assigned to read this book, I probably never would have picked it up for myself, but this is one of the best novels I've ever had the sheer privilege of reading in my life. There is so much to it. It's so well written. I can just go on forever. I feel like you know this already. This book is, in a word, unforgettable. It was such an incredible reading experience, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to read this book for class and to talk about it in discussions every week. It was just fantastic. Of course, I highly recommend it. And the number one spot on my list goes to The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. As you might be able to tell from the cover, or if you've read this book yourself and you just happen to know, it's for a younger audience, and this was actually one of the first books I was ever assigned to read for school in elementary school. I first read this book when I was in single digits, and look at it now. It's in my number one spot on this list. This book has so profoundly impacted my life in ways that I never could have predicted or imagined when I first picked it up, and I'm so grateful that it was assigned to me at such a young age. And this book is so important to me because reading has always been a huge part of my life, but if it weren't for books like this, it might not have always been that way, because reading was a huge part of my infancy, my toddlerhood, my childhood, but once I got into school, I could have very easily lost the love of reading, like many children unfortunately do. But it's books like this that just lit a fire under me and captured my imagination and made me believe in the magic of books long after other children had forgotten. And I honestly think that it's this book that is the reason why I love to read so much now and why I love to write. I've said this before, but this book is so undeniably unique and whimsical, and I loved it so much. It was a huge part of my childhood, and it's also been a huge part of my adulthood. So I'm really thankful to that teacher who assigned this book in class, because it has changed me for the better. So those were my top 5 books that were required reading. In the comments down below, please let me know what are some of your favorite books that were assigned for you to read in class, because I would love to discuss them, but also I'm really curious to see the overlap in our educations. But that is everything I had for this Top 5 Wednesday video today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye.